China is trying to do something very big. They want to stop using the American dollar as the most important money in the world. They want the dollar to go away because it gives the United States too much power over everyone else. This big change did not start in a bank. It did not start in a government building with fancy desks. It actually started in the ocean near a country called Venezuela. Most people who saw this on the news did not understand what was really going on. They thought it was just a sad story about a small country having a hard time. But they missed the real secret. The United States thought it was just being tough on a bad leader. But what they really did was start a quiet war with China. China is already making its move to fight back. This story is not just about one country or one person. It is like a tiny spark that started a giant bomb. When the U.S. sent its big Navy ships to Venezuela, it was not just about rules. It was a move in a giant game of chess. They squeezed a very important pipe that carries oil. In our world, oil is a big deal. When oil from one place stops, everyone feels it. It hurts the way things are made, and it hurts the banks. This shock did not stay in South America. It traveled thousands of miles straight to China. For a long time, China had a great deal for cheap oil. It helped their big economy stay strong. So when the U.S. Navy showed up, they cut off a pipe that went right to China. The news talks about politics, but that is only what we see on the surface. The real story is about how America shows everyone that it is the boss. The United States has a special plan when it wants to win a fight. It does not send in the tanks first. It starts quietly by blocking the roads. Think about it like this. You can control a whole city if you own all the bridges leading into it. The U.S. does this to the whole world. They control where big ships go and the companies that protect those ships. They use their navy to make people feel unsure. If you control energy, you can control entire countries. This is how you fight a war without using any guns. It is very quiet and it hurts a lot. The U.S. put pressure on oil from Venezuela. Suddenly, nobody knew if it was safe to move the oil. A ship captain might be afraid to sail. An insurance company might double its prices. A person who buys oil might think it is too risky. Even boats that are allowed to be there start to stay away. In the world of ships, being late costs a lot of money. So the oil flow stops. Most people thought this was just about Venezuela, but they were wrong. Venezuela was just a tool being used. The real target was China, and China saw the warning loud and clear. China has spent a long time making a plan to keep its country running. They bought oil from many different places. They wanted to make sure no single country could stop them from having energy. Venezuelan oil was a perfect piece of that plan because it was cheap, and the U.S. did not like it. But when that oil is taken away, China does not think it is a small problem. They see it as a direct attack on their safety. For a country that makes almost everything in the world, energy is like food. When the oil slows down, Chinese factories feel the pain. Their costs go up and everything becomes a mess. This forces China to act. They know they cannot fight the U.S. Navy ship against ship. America is much stronger on the water. Trying to fight them with boats would be too slow and would cost too much money. It could even start a real war with bombs. So China plays a different game. They look for a way to hurt back without firing a single shot. The move against Venezuela was a message that China's oil can be taken away anytime the U.S. wants. China's answer is not just a loud speech. Their answer is about money and banks. America owns the ocean roads, but China is making its money into a weapon to fight back. What we are seeing now is the first shot in a new kind of war. China is sending its own message back to Washington. The message is simple. If you squeeze our oil, we will squeeze your dollar. They are going to push where America is most weak. This means pushing in the banks and in the way money flows around the world. This event felt very sudden to most people. It looked like just another headline. But really it was the start of something that had been building for years. The United States thought the pain would stay in one place, but China saw it as a warning shot. Now China's response is easy to guess. It will not be loud or flashy. It will be about money. This is not just a simple trade fight. It is a big change in how power works. Money is now a weapon. Banks are now the battlefield. The moment America squeezed the oil, this stopped being about Venezuela. It became a war over which country's money is the boss. Once you start a war like this, it is very hard to stop. It was a cold and slow way to stop the oil, and it turned the whole area into a dead zone for business. When the U.S. gave the signal, the whole system of moving oil stopped working perfectly. Oil does not move easily. It needs the whole system to work together. Companies have to promise to pay if there is a crash. Ports have to say the ships are safe to dock. If you break just one of those pieces, the whole thing fails. If you break all of them at once, it falls apart. The U.S. Navy did not have to stop every boat. They just had to make people worry. They used fear to make moving that oil a bad business decision. Think about it from the shipping company's side. They make very small profits. If a giant boat is late for just one day, they lose a lot of money. If it sits there for a week, they lose millions of dollars. It does not make sense to do business anymore, so the traders stop buying oil. Captains turn their ships around before they are even told to. Insurance companies stop answering the phone. On paper, it looks like a simple patrol. In real life, it is everyone refusing to play the game. This is how you win a war with fear. The impact inside Venezuela was terrible. They had to stop pumping oil because their big tanks were full and they had nowhere to put it. America hurt them with very little effort. But that pain went to China too. Every drop of oil that stayed in Venezuela was oil that China did not get. For China, this was a disaster. Their factories need cheap oil to keep running. When it stopped, their plans were ruined. China is now looking at this as a fatal weakness that must be fixed. Fixing it does not mean building more boats to fight the U.S. Navy. That would take too long. It means they have to leave the whole system that gives America power. This is why the fight is growing so fast. Oil was just the start. The real answer is about money. Before that happens, the world is in a scary spot. With less oil, prices start to go up. Everyone gets nervous because the system looks weak. Suddenly, a fight in the ocean changes the price of gas in your town. At the same time, the game on the water gets tricky. Ghost ships appear. These are boats that turn off their tracking lights and pretend to be from other countries. They hide who really owns the oil. This is very dangerous because someone could make a big mistake. The U.S. Navy spends billions of dollars to keep these patrols going. American people have to pay for it. The country's debt gets bigger and bigger. Washington can act like the boss of the world, but it is very expensive. China is watching this. They see that while the U.S. blocks boats, it is losing money to do it. Every hour a helicopter flies or a ship sails, it adds to a giant pile of debt that is already out of control. This is not just a theory. A big debt means the government has to pay more interest. It means the U.S. needs other countries to lend them money just to stay afloat. This is where the game flips upside down. America is using its ships to control the world, but it is making itself weak in the bank. This weakness is exactly what China has been waiting for. While America is focused on ships, China is getting its money ready. Money does not need a big ship or a soldier. It just needs one thing: trust. And trust can disappear in a second. The oil blockade was the first crack in a big wall. As the oil stopped, China learned a lesson. They learned that cheap energy depends on politics. The only way to win is to escape that trap. They have to shift the fight away from the ocean and into the world of money. This is when the real conflict goes silent. It leaves the water and enters the bank books. The oil blockade worked, but it also started the next phase of the war. This is a war where the victims are not sailors, but people with savings accounts. What looked like a simple squeeze was actually the start of something far more dangerous. The United States thought it was just pushing a weak country around, but it was actually starting a fight with a superpower. Washington can talk about justice, but China sees it as a threat. America choked off energy that fuels Chinese factories. This was a big mistake. Venezuela's money did not matter much to the U.S., but its oil was very important to China. For years, China took a risk. They bought oil that other people would not touch. They got it for a low price, and it helped their economy grow. This was business. Cheap energy is like air for a giant factory. When it was cut off, China lost more than just oil. They lost power. They began to wonder who the U.S. would cut off next. This makes everything very tense. America sees a cheap way to show power, but China sees a threat to its life. This is how a small move becomes a global fight. When the oil fields shut down, China had to find new oil. But you cannot do that overnight. It takes a long time and a lot of money. Plus, not all oil is the same. Venezuelan oil is very thick. China's factories were built specifically for that oil. You cannot just use a different kind without losing a lot of money. These little details matter. Energy systems are machines. When you break them, the whole economy feels it. From China's view, the U.S. just put a big tax on them without asking. This was a strategic mistake. By focusing on oil, Washington dragged China into the fight. China is not getting emotional. They are being careful. They want to find the weakness. The weakness is the roads on the ocean that the U.S. Navy controls. They want to be less dependent on those roads. They can buy more oil and save it, but that only helps for a little while. The most important thing they can do is push back. If you cannot protect your boats, you have to find another way to hurt your enemy where they are weak. This is the logic driving everything now. Washington thinks it is just following the rules. But China sees a warning about the future. They know that if things get worse, America could do this to any country. It started with Venezuela, but it could be the Middle East tomorrow. For a country like China that has to buy most of its energy from others, this is a huge threat. This is why the real fight is moving away from oil. It is moving towards the system that controls how we trade. China knows they cannot build a giant navy overnight, but they can change the rules of the money game. They can make it so other countries do not want to hold the US dollar. These are not big, loud moves. They are small steps that are hard to stop. The US is still looking at the boats. They see the oil stopping and think they are winning. They do not see the bad things that will happen next. By showing how easily they can stop oil, America is giving everyone a reason to stop using the dollar. People want to escape the system that gives America so much power. This escape is moving faster now. China knows that depending on a system that your rival controls is too risky. This is when the fight stops being about one country. It is about whether China can let America turn off its economy anytime they want. The answer is no. So the goal is to prevent the next crisis. That does not start with building big ships. It starts with building a new money system. The US can block boats, but it cannot make the world use its money if there is a better choice. It can punish companies, but it cannot stop money from running away to a safer place. By pushing so hard, Washington showed everyone its own weakness. It reminded the world that America's power is built on a mountain of debt. China understands this better than anyone. They know that every US Navy patrol adds more strain to America's money. Financial strain creates chances for China to win. Now the game is moving away from oil ships. It is moving into the world of exchange rates and money. While everyone is watching the ocean, China is using a secret weapon. This weapon uses psychology and how people think. This is where China's money, the yuan, comes in. This is not a boring detail. It is a very big deal. China does not have to say they are starting a money war. They just show the world what they are willing to do. For a long time, people said China kept its money cheap, so they could sell toys easily. But things are different now. Survival is more important than selling cheap things. China is now letting its money get stronger. This is a very smart move that hurts the US in three ways. First, it makes people want to invest in China. Money always goes where it can grow. As the US gets more debt, China's money looks like a safe place. People from all over the world start moving their money out of America. Second, it stops the US from complaining. For years, politicians said China was cheating. Now China can say they are playing by the rules. Third, it makes China rich. A strong currency means they can buy more things for less. They can buy oil fields and mines and technology. This is a plan to get power for a long time. China understands that money is a sign of trust. When trust in the US dollar fades, people look for a new home for their money. America is trapped because it has to keep borrowing money, which makes the dollar weaker. China just needs it to get a little bit weaker every day. Each small move is like a tiny cut. Together, they can make an empire lose its strength. The Venezuela crisis was a wake-up call. It showed that the world is no longer a safe place. Everyone wants a safe harbor, and China is trying to prove it is that place. When America showed it was willing to use energy as a weapon, it made the dollar look risky. China's move with its money is the answer. It says there is another option now. This is why the move is quiet but very strong. China is building trust every day. As their money gets stronger, big investors start to notice. They put a little money in, then a lot more. Success makes more people trust them. The US is watching, and they are finding out that a money war is very hard to fight. You cannot stop trust with guns. You cannot block money without hurting your own banks. The tools America has are like using a heavy hammer for a tiny job. They have very bad side effects. China can afford to be patient and let their money get stronger slowly. China is thinking 10 steps ahead. They are moving away from being a cheap factory and becoming a money superpower. They want to control the world's money, not just sell toys. This is the real war. It is far more important than what you see on the news. You can move a boat, but once you lose trust, you can never get it back. America's move against Venezuela opened a door that will never close. China walked through that door with a cold plan. The fight is now about who writes the rules for the future. The old way of using force is too expensive. The world is changing and a new era has begun. The era of one country being the boss of everyone is over. The US still has many things going for it, but those things now cost too much. China's strategy is to let America pay that high price while they change the rules. As more countries realize what is happening, they will move their money too. This will create a giant wave of change that cannot be stopped. What started as a simple oil blockade has now started a global money reckoning. And once a reckoning like this starts, it does not stop. It will change the world for a very long time. China's next move was even more shocking. They targeted the one thing America uses to pay for its whole empire. You do not want to miss the rest of this story.